All right, moving back to item 6.01, Mrs. Kinsella.
Thank you so much. Where we ended was with communication, and there has been not much feedback, like I said, from Tucker, the Tucker folks impacted, or the Hermitage folks impacted into Henrico. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about what's been done. And then once again, I just want to highlight, while we have a solution for capacity, reducing capacity. It is not a solution to still have Quioccasin, Holman, Tuckahoe, Hungry Creek, and Brooklyn Middle School feeding one high school. That is unlike any other high school in Henrico schools. But I would like to know about communication. I would like to know about communication, especially since I know a lot of the folks, Dumbarton and Holiday folks, leaving Tucker. So many are multilingual. So I'd like to know about communication.
Yeah, and so our Parent Square notifications about the process are available to them in the language in which they subscribe to it. So hopefully that hasn't been a barrier to access it. We can certainly, I know I shared this previously as the timeline was being developed. It's a busy time of year for families. They're newly involved in a school, getting to know teachers and routines, and so bandwidth is always difficult in communicating other topics and getting everyone's attention. But we can certainly double down, particularly after this meeting. We will send an update out to the community, but particularly targeting these communities that may be impacted by the changes. So we'll continue efforts there, and those are available in their language.
I would appreciate that, because in the Brooklyn district, since we are in the middle, this is how things have happened to the folks that live in my district. Feeder patterns broken, driving by schools. This is how it's happened. I need my community to know this is happening to them, because I want to know how they feel about it.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsella. Ms. Atkins?
Thank you, Chair Shea. One question that I do have is, I know we are communicating to families. Are we providing guidance to principals as they receive these questions, and as changes happen, are principals receiving talking notes or guidance to share back with families, or perhaps even students that have questions as well?
Certainly, they've received updates as scenarios have been added or left if it's impacted their community, but we're happy to provide additional information that might be helpful specifically to the principals of students where students may be impacted. We can certainly double down on those efforts, and have assisted as needed if questions have come up in those communities.
I also think that as those talking points or the guidance that's given, keeping in mind that one family may have students that attend multiple schools, and so that communication is so important to be consistent.
Absolutely, which is one reason why we looked at a more narrow, targeted approach, realizing we were leaving people out that way. So we have communicated to the entire division on this topic regularly, frequently. We have the website dedicated. All families receive the survey so that we're not leaving anyone out, but certainly can double down in specific areas as needed.
Thank you. Ms. Kinsella, I certainly hear your frustration with feeder patterns, and Mr. Young, I appreciate your acknowledgement as well of the complex feeder patterns. It's kind of where our districts come together, actually, with Tucker and Quioccasin and all of that, where some of these feeder patterns are really muddy. Obviously, I appreciate the division putting together, a preliminary proposal as a solution. As we got capacity numbers, obviously that became not viable, because it was going to give Tucker one less feeder middle school, but also 50% of their students coming from one middle school together, right, one core. And so, unfortunately, a consequence of not being able to move forward with sections 1 and 2 is that Tucker will not be able to reduce their feeder patterns or have that community. But as a board, I remain dedicated to looking at this feeder pattern issue. I think as we look broadly at programming, at CIP, how can we be strategic in continuing to work on this? Obviously, doing it at the cost of putting a school over 100% capacity, as Mr. Young said, just isn't, it isn't viable. And so feeder patterns are easy to break, hard to fix. And so it's gonna take dedication from us as a board and creativity and continuing to think outside the box and dig into things together. And we have the CIP conversation coming up in a couple months too, that we can kind of tie in to that as well. I would like to move to transitions. So we've got, again, Sarah, I really appreciate you putting together these transitions. If we could go, I think it's very helpful for us as board members, or for me as a board member, to be able to see the specific numbers that we're actually talking about when we're talking about what grades would transition and which would have the option to remain where they are. So we've talked that traditionally that would impact rising 11th and 12th. So to be clear, the rising 11th and 12th are which grades on this slide, Ms. Thayer?
So for the purpose of these estimations, because we can't know rising ninth,
Okay.
that is a very difficult population to pinpoint right now in this process, as we just got our current enrollment numbers. This is just an estimation using current year 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Of
because we-
students who would be matriculating to the newly
Yes.
zoned school.
Yes,
Yeah, and
Right.
assuming half of them go and half of them
half of them stay.
remain, choose to remain, if you extended that option. I think that's what you wanted to see, potentially how that would impact capacity generally, given these moves were designed to either alleviate capacity or grow capacity at a high school. If you didn't do it as originally considered, where only 11th and 12th graders would be given consideration to remain, and you extended that to those who would be rising into 10th grade.
So really, we're here for Freeman, we're looking at an estimated delta of 50% using a 50% utilization.
Yes.
Or not 50, sorry, 15 students
Correct.
using a 50% utilization. And so when I see that number of 15 students, to me, is not having a significant mathematical impact on the functioning of the school for that 1 year. However, that's a really significant impact to those 15 students individually. And so as we're looking that, even with extending that to include any students who have started at the high school to be able to finish at the high school, it's still, with a 50% utilization estimation, it still gets both Freeman and Tucker under 100% in year one.
Yes.
And then that would improve or continue to decrease for years 2 and 3 as well, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So for me, I absolutely support this. To me, it is doing what's best by students while also being able to get buildings under 100%. And so I will yield to my colleagues to see how you're feeling on this.
Madam Chair, I got a couple clarifying questions. Are you saying that if you started high school, you get to remain in high school?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, as we look at transition enrollment, I'm looking at Henrico High specifically, if we can, that number 313 for ninth enrollment, that's not including the Abbey Center or the Center for the Arts?
No.
Okay, so that number ideally would be higher than 313, assuming we have 50 to 75 kids coming in.
Well, I apologize, I did misspeak. So that 313 is our current ninth grade enrollment, which does have IB, and
Yeah.
it does have the Art Center in it.
It predicts any potential new ninth graders coming in. It would be
Yes.
hard to know exactly how many would be in IB or the various programs there, but it is a similar sized freshman class to that which has been traditional.
All right, let's clarify a little bit more. So the 313 is zoned students for Henrico High School?
Or those in a specialty program, those who would be coming in new as ninth graders.
How many ninth grade allotments are there for Abbey?
I will defer to Dr. Hughes.
75.
CFA?
75,
All right, so that's 150.
correct.
All right, plus another 75 with the cybersecurity. I think that puts us at 225?
I believe so.
All right. So the 454 could be essentially higher.
It could be.
Okay, that's what, I just wanted a clarifying question, just trying to figure out where the specialty programs sort of fall in line with when I'm looking at the number of enrollment for our students here. Madam Chair, I'll yield back. I might have another question, but if anyone else had to ask any clarifying questions.
Okay, so these slides on the 23 to 25, this assumes all the high schools scenarios go through, right?
Yes.
It assumes that, but then that's just base functional capacity, not day one, day two, right?
Correct.
Okay, just so
Yes, that's a very
I'm
good
really
question.
following.
That's great.
And then in terms of day one, day two,
It will lower it.
any ACE impact that you've shown us today, or in these scenarios, includes current ACE programming, yes?
Yes.
Because then my concern is we're looking at all these scenarios and talking about development impact and how, we have capacity, it just may not be where we need it. And the ACE programming that is yet to come is about half a high school,
I believe so, yes.
right? 900, it's about 900, 1,100 seats. So my specific question, the second floor of ACE, recently at Business Advisory, and I know the Tech Foundation had the same discussion, have we found the funding to complete the second floor, which is an impact of 400 seats to ACE?
I'm not specifically updated on timelines and funding sources, but progress is well underway. And a good bit of it is thanks to the donations of incredible partners in both the time they're spending with our young people and monetarily, as well as some of our own funding. And again, this was a not funded project going into the building,
Right.
but something we're eager to fund because of the programs it offers for our students. And to your point, the additional seats. We anticipate opening those as we've previously advertised. Now, staffing could be a challenge
Right.
related there because they are unique specialty programs, but assuming we would have even half of those seats, you will see an ACE impact. What we do know is that ACE enrollment continues steady or to increase.
Right.
There's a demand for the seats that we do have, and we would anticipate as those new seats come on board, we'll see. So right now, we know these figures, if we factored in ACE day one, day two, will drop.
Right.
And by the time we project to this next school year, if new ACE seats are available, there could potentially be a larger impact, is I think what you're aiming towards. and
Correct.
I
Well,
would confirm.
I just
Yes.
know that the impact ACE Hermitage, completing that building expanding program, because prior to my service on this board and Mrs. Shea and Ms. Atkins, Henrico Schools was turning down 1,000 students a year. We weren't meeting the need. So to hear that, I know a lot had been donated, but the second floor of ACE Herm had been paused because of the mechanical funding. And we received lots of donations. And because when I look at the projections, and I realize how much ACE day one, day two really are saving the schools that have been over capacity. Deep Run, 101.3, Freeman, 101.5, Glen Allen, 100.4, Tucker, 102.6. Like the ACE day one, day two impact, right? It just
Yeah.
demonstrates the program programmatic
It
impact.
does. We've
To meet the
adding
needs of
new,
kids, but
adding new
also
specialty centers as
capacity.
well. We had the new environmental center come on board. We saw students making choices there. We'll have the new cybersecurity program coming on board. So I think with ACE programming, specialty centers, and while we've seen some inconsistent trends with overall enrollment in Henrico County Public Schools, we have seen that steady decline at the high school level. So I think you can attribute the decline in high school enrollment with the availability of specialty programming, both at ACE and otherwise, new opportunities to really helping us in schools where we had seen, a much tighter fit. So it has certainly been significant.
Thank you for that. I mean, this is, like I said earlier, this is one of the things, at least with transition, if you're there, if you start there, you finish there. And that was one of the most consistent things throughout all the town halls we heard. So that's all I had, Madam Chair.
So Chair Shay, if we could just reiterate that coming from you so that we are very, very clear on the statement of start there, finish there. I think let's have a discussion because it is not as simple as that. We have to think about transportation and other pieces to that. So I just want to be very clear with if you started there, you get to stay there, but there are other factors that is being taken into consideration and discussion.
Yes, so I would like to see, seeing that we can get under 100% with the option of you start there, stay there. I would like to see we offer that opportunity to students and families. And so it would be great if we could, give our families some direction on that, if we could get to consensus on that. If we need, what other clarifying questions, colleagues, do you need information on in order to be able to opine yes or no?
Yeah, so some of the things that we should have conversations on is transportation. And what are the costs? Are additional resources necessary? And what impacts to students can we project? That's a few at top of mind for me.
So I cannot give you exact figures, but I could tell you that providing transportation for students represented in every one of these high school scenarios, it's a significant number of students, to have the option to remain in the high school they've been attending, even if rezoned, we would not feasibly be able to offer transportation. We could certainly extend the courtesy of staying in that school. Certainly if a student is already being transported there, they're part of a specialty center or whatever, that would remain. I'm talking about students who live in the home zone who are already attending there, and their zone changes, for example, from Hermitage to Henrico. We wouldn't be able to run double buses through every single one of the neighborhoods represented for every one of the high schools in the scope of this scenario, though I certainly do hear the board's support for it, sounds like generally, allowing students to remain, and certainly, the figures support that's very possible.
And Dr. Cashwell, point of clarity, when you're talking about that providing transportation would not be feasible, that's regardless if it's 11th and 12th or 10, 11th and 12th, correct?
Correct. So typically, if the school division has changed a boundary and a student's boundary changes, I'll use the same example from Hermitage and Henrico, if they were a 10th or 11th grader who would remain to be a rising 11th and 12th grader, it would be on the assumption that you provide your own transportation.
So extending the ability 1 year is not changing our transportation ability.
No.
Correct, okay. I just wanted to have that point of clarity, but didn't want to interrupt Ms. Atkins if you have some additional questions.
No, I just want us to get the conversation started.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question. Dr. Cashwell, what if someone ideally changes their mind and want to go to the zoned school? Let's just use the same example. Herm to Henrico. They decide to stay at Herm next year, but then decide that they want to come to Henrico the following year. what does that scenario look like?
Well, they would be able to do that because that would be there in their zoned school of attendance, and they would simply transfer to that school.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
But they would, great question. That was exactly what I was thinking. So if they change their mind, right, Herm to Henrico, you said they would, what, just re-enroll at, they
Their
would?
home school. Mhm.
Okay.
And, and I think that's one of the things we talked about earlier in this process is, trying to predict what would it look like if you offer this extended window. And, we kind of give you a snapshot at a year's point. But to your point, that's going to then fluctuate at the giving and sending schools, if you will, a bit in those first years, because some students may avail themselves 1 year or both years, depending on if they're depending on what grade level they're in. They may choose to remain the whole time or part of the time, but we wouldn't preclude someone. If you opted to stay, you wouldn't be locked into that until graduation. Your home school attendance zone would still be available to you.
I think it's also important to point out the opposite, where I do believe that if you choose to go to, then you have to stay. Yes, if you choose to go to
Correct.
the.
You would have to then apply for a variance
You would not be able to
in
go
which
backwards,
other
yes.
factors would need to be true in order to attend a school outside of your home zone. This would be the board approving that unique case in which students would remain because their attendance boundary changed. That would be the reason. And so that reason would only apply for the time in which that applied and not beyond that.
Yeah, so then I would, just reiterate my support for all current high schoolers who would like to stay, have the ability to, but that, providing transportation to those folks would not be feasible. It would be even less so feasible extending that down to all high schoolers rather than just rising juniors and seniors.
Anybody else need clarifying questions or would like to opine? So Mr. Irving and I support extending the ability, if you have started at the high school, to have the option to finish at the high school. Other members?
I support that, as long as capacity is not an issue, which as shown today, it doesn't seem to be. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsella. Ms. Atkins?
Absolutely.
Mr. Young?
I support.
Fantastic, colleagues. So it sounds like we have support, unanimous support, in order to offer students who have, in impacted areas, who have started at the high school, the opportunity to finish at the high school, provided they can, they would need to provide their own transportation.
And for clarity, it's also 5th and 8th as well.
Yes, we're not forgetting
focused on
that.
the high school, but I just wanted to reiterate that was, yes, but I don't think that's under contention.
Thank you, Mr. Irving. Dr. Heschel, do you need any more clarity on that item?
No, I think I'm clear. So for the high schools, rising ninth graders would attend their newly zoned high school. Others who have been attending a high school may opt to remain without transportation provided by the division. And for the middle school and elementary, you continue with the traditional 5-8 transition years, 5-8.
Yes. All right.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, one more question that came to mind.
Love it.
Still
Bring it
support
on.
When it comes to truancy, with children that are going to other schools that we don't provide transportation for, what would we do as a division? Will we require them to go to the home school at that point?
That's a really good question and a real-life example. And so students who find themselves in a position where they are having truancy meetings or there are attendance concerns that appear that it's due to the fact that they can't ride a bus to school would be asked to attend where they can have regular transportation. We want our students to be present in school to learn each and every day.
Thank you.
All right. I think we've covered everything, adjustments for this go-round with this information, but colleagues, correct me if I'm wrong. Are we good? Ms. Thayer, I think you got all your standing minutes for the day. We really appreciate your work on these numbers, your expertise to be able to ask questions. Colleagues, thank you for working through those things. I know we made some asks of you coming up coming up for continued conversation. So thank you, everyone. Anything else on this topic? Great, glad to hear.